Teachers have read it. What is the most NSFW thing you've seen a student do in class? Not a teacher, but in kindergarten there was a girl in my class who would constantly take off her clothes and run around the room naked until someone could catch her. It was really a weird thing to try and process as a 6-year-old. There had to be a company-wide meeting for the after-school program I taught for because one of my students was caught giving a hand job to her boyfriend in every class during the first week of school. They weren't allowed to sit next to each other for the remaining 2 years. They could only see each other during the program. When I was an ESL teacher in Japan, a high school student threatened to abuse me during class. He thought I didn't understand Japanese, and that it would be a fun joke. Not a teacher, but when I was in 8th grade I witnessed a kid go up to the teacher's desk and set his boner down on her desk, saying, "Look what you did to me." I was helping out in a high school class and I caught the girl at the back giving the guys either side of her a hand job at the same time. In class, caught 2 morons do a drug deal on 4/20 of all days. How dumb do you have to be? I guess they thought they were slick. Both dropped pencils. One picked it up and left money on the ground. The next picked up the money and left the bag on the ground. The buyer dropped his pencil again and picked up the bag. Out of class, walked in on 2 students having sex in a rarely used stairwell. The guy took the girl's pants and threw them at us as he made his escape. The girl just screamed in anger and humiliation. That was a surprising interruption. A kid used to rip the anti-theft sensors out of the spines of library books and plant them in kids' pens, backpacks, binders etc. The alarms would go off all day. Librarians had a tough time figuring out what the bell was going on. Not a teacher. I've seen my friend put his hand inside his girlfriend's pants during class. The teacher saw, complained to the principal. She got suspended. He got expelled. Not a teacher. I did have a classmate who put 2 fingers in her V, showed me her wet fingers and asked me if I wanted a taste. I declined. Couldn't stand up for 2 minutes though. Not a teacher, but I was sat on a desk with 5 other guys. They told me that they have a surprise for me and to look under table. Being a gullible 10-year-old girl, I looked down and all of them had their D's out. Was a surprise to say the least. Gargantuan special ed boy in middle school wore sweet pants exclusively. Lots of awkward boners. Not awkward for him. He either didn't notice or didn't care. But awkward for everyone else. Especially because there's nothing you can really do or say to him about it. You just made sure to keep your distance because he didn't care what or who it bumped into. I knew a college girl getting certified to teach technology ed, which includes traditional trades. Her requirements included student teaching, and her assignment was to a middle school wood shop. Her first day in the classroom she discovered a kid using the bandsaw dust collection suction tube as masturbation enhancer. Not a teacher, but in 7th grade I walked into the locker room to change for gym, and saw 2 kids trying to figure out how sex works. They did not know how it works. Catholic school was wild. Had a couple of kids set fire to the rubbish bin in the back of the class as they didn't want to do a French exam. It worked. They got suspended. Not a teacher, but during the last week of 8th grade, this popular chick was expelled because a gym teacher found acid in her shoes in the girls' locker room. Once the girl found out she was expelled, she immediately went to the gym to fight the teacher. We only had 1 female gym teacher, so it was easy to find out who reported her. My group of friends were outside killing time during lunch when all of a sudden this chick busts through the double doors, spearing the gym teacher through them and crashes on the ground. She starts to pummel her while our officer comes out of nowhere and tackles the student to the ground. Well, she was so enraged that she took them both head on, and it took about 10 minutes of sparring with the officer and the teacher before she was restrained. When I was a counselor, I saw a boy jacking off in the hallways. I noped a U-turn and walked away. Not a teacher, but happened right next to me in the computer lab during middle school. There was this strange girl in my class. There's one in every class, you know the one I'm talking about. Fake tails. Would wear cat ears literally all the time. Anyway, she was sitting next to me in computer lab and started to squirm in her chair a little, like she was trying to itch something. Well, she stops squirming and looks down, puts her hand down her pants and brings up 2 fingers that were completely red. But it didn't stop there, oh no. She then smelled it for a bit and licked it off. I almost threw up. Word spread quick of what had happened. Honestly, I don't think she ever cared. Edit. Kicked or licked. I'm still not sure who pooped in the tuba, but I hold a grudge. I was in detention with this kid named Jabari and this girl named Alyssa. Now Jabari had a problem. A huge problem. With authority and would always get into fights and do crazy it. Well, this time he thought it was a good idea to put his balls on Alyssa's head. The teacher was so shocked, he just started to cry. He immediately got expelled after that. This was like 8th grade. Dude had a monster dong though. Use a ladder without 3 points of contact. Special needs child in high school. Running full speed down the hallway. Naked. Masturbating. And pooping. Full speed. During a quiz in Latin class, this girl who always sat at the front decided finishing her quiz was more important than making it to the bathroom in time. With the ab strength of an Olympian, she dripped it out for a few minutes. Just enough time to finish her quiz. Before running out of the room, there was a puddle dripping from her seat to the floor, and the puddle was red. This was strike 2 for her. Teacher here. I stepped out to make a copy for a kid that had forgotten his book. Heard screaming and went back to the room. Everyone pointed at Peter. I asked Peter why. He stood on the chair and pulled out his heater and started dancing. Had a friend in high school who told me that he once had a teacher in a wheelchair. The whole back row of the class, all boys school, used to masturbate while he was teaching simply because it took him a while to turn around, away from the board, giving them time to put their Ds away. I'm not a teacher, but some dude flashed his pubes in front of the girls. They were laughing hysterically. I'm not a teacher, but when I was in kindergarten I walked into the boys' restroom and saw 3 kids huddled around one kid. They were making him lick all of their butt cheeks. They looked at me and said, "If you want to be our friend you have to do the same thing." I slowly walked out and couldn't process what was happening or why it was happening. I'm a sub, and fairly new to it as well. I long-term subbed a 7th grade history class last year. While I was walking around the room reading a section, I see a girl pull her shirt and bra down to show her goods to the male student in front of her. I am a week into my first sub job and didn't expect this. I just looked back at the textbook and said, "Tracy, now is not the time for sharing." The reason she volunteered for the whole class was that the other student hadn't seen them yet. Admins let her back in class before the class period was over. It wasn't the worst thing that happened while I was there. Another student took a pair of large scissors and pulled the joint apart so he had 2 big shanks. He chased another student around the room like a Looney Tunes episode, threatening to stab him because he didn't like a look he was given. The football coach and I tackled him down and wrestled the scissors knife away. I had brought a coach in specifically to give this kid a homework check, because he was a huge distraction and a behavior problem. He was back in class the next day. There are no consequences in this school district. Funny school story here that this reminded me of. Friends and I were snowboarding in NH and recalling some NSFW school memories on the chairlift. This one kid was notorious for always jerking off in class. Like always. We were laughing so hard, practically yelling about how he was always seen rubbing one out under the desk. We get off the chairlift and sit down to strap in, on this skier from the chairlift behind us goes up to my friend and shakes his hand saying, "Hey friend, good to see you." It was the jerk off kid's dad. Never laughed so hard in my life. Not a teacher, but as a HS student, my peer would pee in a soda bottle and jerk off after. A friend of mine was also chased around the classroom by the same guy with his D out and my teacher never noticed. There was also a gay orgy in the guy's locker room. 2 friends attended. 20 total. And the senior girls harassed freshmen who decided sleeping with the seniors' boyfriends by covering their locker room with pregnancy tests and pads covered in fake blood. We had our senior trip cancelled because of that, and how the senior prank was releasing white lab rats into the school during a period change, and a lot of students ended up crushing them under rain boots. Blood and carcasses everywhere. How any of us graduated was a miracle. Edit. We only had a graduation because parents complained. It was cancelled for 2 months. Not a teacher, but when I was 9 some girl in my class pissed on her brother. That was a weird day. Not a teacher, but I went to school. Not a teacher but a schoolmate went on the teacher's computer while she was gone and put up some porn for the entire class. It was a blowjob video and he was telling his girlfriend jokingly, "This is how it's done, Michelle," with a smirk on his face. All the girls in the class were looking away being shy while the guys were laughing and grinning at the girls. Disclaimer, not a teacher, but it was incidents like this during student teaching that made me say duck this. I'm going to law school. A month into student teaching I get assigned to cover the resource room. This is decades ago, long before mainstreaming. All special ed kids were kept separate from the rest of the school. Most of the teachers referred to it as the Tard Farm. Now I'm one crass bastard, but even I thought that was pretty insensitive. About halfway into the day I look up and see this girl staring at me. Her head is shaking. I pan down and see that her pants are off. She is masturbating. Furiously, I pan up and she is still mad dogging me. It was probably one of the top WTF moments of my life. When I was in 7th grade, one of the bigger kids jerked off long enough to actually come. From there it's all legend though. I've heard many different things that happened. From him shooting so far that it hit the desk in front of him and hitting the girl, the hottest girl in our school, and who he said he was jerking it to in front of him and getting it in her hair. The teacher came over and didn't know what it was and put her finger in it. He got it in his hand and started wiping it on people. He got put on sex offenders lists in high school for peeing on the tennis courts. 12-year-old girl, tomboy, sticks her hand down her pants and pulled out a pube. She then threw it at another student. He didn't see and I pretended not to since I didn't know what the duck to do. 2nd year teaching. Not me, but my wife is a special ed teacher and she used to work in a severe behavior disorder school teaching K6. One student told her that he was going to cut off her head, then abuse her, then eat chicken nuggets. Why the duck does it seem so common to jerk off in class? I'm in my last year of college and have never heard that urge in class ever. Is this like an American thing or something? This is probably buried as I'm late to the party, but on the bus ride home this guy and girl would have a sex every single day. He would slouch down real low and she would sit on top, with her arms on top of their seat back and the one in front of them. I'd get on the bus early sometimes and sure enough, despite praying to the bus gods that they not sit across from me, they did. So awkward. High school, North Carolina. Not a teacher, but one time in driver's ed a girl put her phone on vibrate in her pants and heard her friends call her. She was pretty attractive back then, but I couldn't not think of it after seeing her after that day. Eric sat in the back and one day said D louder and louder. I heard of course and let him say a couple obvious ones. Finally he cleared his throat with a solid and loud D. I was expecting it and looked right at him halfway through the word. Busted. Not too NSFW, but that's the most NSFW. Also the boys like to leave giant turds on display in the toilets. Not a teacher, but had a friend decide it was funny to replace one of the yellow Gatorades in the lunch line with a bottle of his own urine. He was eventually caught and sent to an alternative learning center, but not before we witnessed some kid take a swig of his golden nectar. Jam a pendulum up someone's ass during physics. I sure do not miss Drew. I had sex with my then girlfriend in the head of year's office while she, the head of year, was in a meeting with my parents. Girl was getting fingered in the cafeteria and someone got it on SC. They got suspended. Month later the same girl and the same guy were caught doing it again in the library. Not a teacher, just a witness. A girl was known, from 1st to 8th grade or something, for rubbing her private parts on the edge of a table. So when class was over but we weren't allowed to leave the room yet, you could find the girl near a table making weird faces. Not a teacher, but one time the kid that sat in front of me and my friend in chemistry unzipped his trousers and pulled his scrotum through his underwear. We only noticed when he started walking around the class to get glue and scissors for the activity we were doing. He even had the balls, pun definitely intended, to have the teacher come over to his desk to help him with the work while it was still out there. A kid in my class senior year of high school did a line of coke off his desk on a dare and lost his D1 scholarship after he was found out. It was the last month of school and the dude just threw all that away. Not a teacher, but this really weird kid got caught masturbating during algebra in 8th grade. Not quite as NSFW. But in that same class some kid projectile vomited all over a friend of mine. Not in the classroom but on a field trip. My last school had a trip to take art students to a gallery in Chicago. A high school girl gave a guy oral on the bus on the way there. They thought they were being discreet, but several students filmed, posted, and snapped. Parents were called and dad could come and pick up the boy, but my co-worker, art teacher, had to drive the girl all the way back. 2+ HRS. Talk about awkward car trip. The weird thing is, after all the suspensions and stuff, the girl involved used many classroom discussions for the remainder of the year to make weird and explicit innuendos about sex and blowjobs. Like every story we read had a Freudian interpretation about oral fixations. Awkward as hell. Has a classmate grind up Xanax and strawberry crystal light. Why that? I don't know. And snorted while the teacher went to the restroom. Sneezed red powder everywhere. Does it count if I'm not a teacher and I see her hand in my pants? Got a hand job in class a few times from my GF at the time. I think the girls behind me knew but never said anything. I fingered a girl in the library during 10th grade health class. We were playing Are You Nervous and she wasn't nervous. Now I also a copyright airing at all. Not a but. Teacher. My auto shop class once set a restored but original Model T on fire. Literally not safe for work but in actual school. As a teacher's assistant at a summer camp, we had all called in the kids for a communal activity in the main area. One kid was missing. He was the troublemaker. When he walked in, his pants were down and he was just showing off his junk for everyone to see. We had to hastily rush him out of the area. Love how this is some seriously morbid experiences from students rather than teachers. What if they have their own secret experiences like what goes on in that creepy staff room where they all gather for sacrifice? He tasered himself in the neck before a football game. Not a teacher. I know, don't say it, just shut up and listen. One couple in the hallway started full on humping in between classes. Like if nobody was around it would have gone to full 6. Second couple, instead of putting his hand down the front of her pants, he goes full on down the back side. Full hand down her ass crack. Teacher saw the whole thing. Third couple decided to have a sex in the bathroom during winter formal. Teacher walked in on the whole thing. One kid was a cringy Minecraft neckbird, fedora and everything, and the girl was a furry. She was meowing while they had sex. I feel bad for the teacher who walked in on them. Not a teacher, but my best friend went to an all-boys school and it was his last day. He was transferring high schools. He asks to go to the bathroom and the teacher gives him a hard time saying he just wants to skip out on class since it's his last day. My friend just walks out of the room and heads to the bathroom to do his business. Lo and behold, he comes storming back into the room with a ball of paper towels with something wrapped in it and plants it right on the teacher's desk. My buddy literally picked his it out of the toilet to prove to the teacher he actually needed to use the bathroom. After writing this, I probably need to reevaluate my friends. Not me, but my dad teaches elementary school and he had a kid who used to poop himself then pull it out from his pants and roll it into little balls. That's probably the grossest story he has shared. Really nice kid though, he just had some learning disabilities and needed a little extra supervision. Not a teacher, and not particularly NSFW, but my high school art teacher had previously taught at a special needs school. There was an autistic kid in the class who would take the pants off all the Barbie dolls in the room, of which there were several. He'd lie down on the ground on his back and lay the pants out over his body and chant pants, pants over and over again. To this day I can't have a conversation about pants where this voice doesn't pop into my head at some point. Not a teacher. A guy tried to it in a garbage can in the hallway, missed and it on the floor. Next day we had a copycat itter who also just shat on the floor. Not a teacher, but in 8th grade, a kid in my class was sent to the hall, a small hall leading to the class. When the teacher went to check on him like 10 minutes later, he was just sitting there jerking off. Teacher's assistant hair fingering herself in the front of class. That was a fun parent meeting. Not a teach, but in 9th or 10th grade we had wood shop with a cool teacher. He made pots of coffee through the day for anyone to have. Some stupid kid put drugs in his coffee one morning and when I got to class, the teacher was just sitting there by himself. rocking back and forth repeating if I only had a brain, over and over. He quit after that and became an iron worker, I hear. Not a teacher, sorry, but I do have some good stories. In freshman year of high school, me and two friends were hanging out in the hallways when a girl comes up to us and asks to speak to one of us in private. So me and my other friend get up and walk around the corner and wait. We hear them talking for 2 minutes about random stuff. I believe it we about homework, when we suddenly hear our friend stop short and a zipper going down. Next thing we can just hear a loud slurping sucking sound. We had to fight to control our laughter. Apparently she just talked to him about homework, then grabbed his thing and went for it. Same girl would also randomly change her panties in the comments. She would just scream "nobody look," as if that made it okay. IDK how no teachers ever found out. Not a teacher. One girl in my class wore short shorts, no underwear, and sat on our level bleachers. I visited a high school in a rural town in Japan. There was a basketball team practice, but the coach cancelled it because I was there, and apparently that was a special event. A guy removed all his clothes and ran around naked screaming yes. After that we played SSBB emulated on my laptop. A quarter of the boys in the class jerking off. Girl at a school my friend went to was fingering herself with a test tube in the science lab. Teacher walked in. She freaked out and slammed her legs up without thinking. In grade 4 I think, we were all sitting on the floor in music class listening to the teacher speak when one of the 5th graders, we had split classes, small school, in the front row, casually put her hands down her pants and started feeling around down there. Teacher did her best to avoid eye contact. I'm a toddler teacher, so them pulling their pants down happens a lot. Also they tend to like to play with their genitals while I'm changing their diapers. XGF told me a story. When she was 8 or 9 her school got a new PC that had a webcam attached. Her and 2 friends were using the computer one lunchtime for some project. They then proceeded to undress their lower halves and fully record their anatomy on said computer. Young male teacher walks in on them, gives them a stern talking to and deletes the files. At least I hope he did. One of my male teachers had a female student aide. Once during lunch, the teacher returned from fetching food to find his aide having sex with another student, her boyfriend I think, on his desk. He performed a solid about face and walked far away, presumably to the administrative offices.